All right, guys. So today I'm going to teach you a couple little tricks about using text boxes when we are working in Google Slides. So what I'm going to have you do, you're going to open up a new tab in Chrome. You're going to click on the 9 boxes and go to your drive. So your drive is where all of your files are stored. They don't take up any space on the computer, so they're stored on the cloud, which means that you can access them anywhere where you have a internet connection and a computer. So you're going to double click on All About Me, your All About Me presentation that you started yesterday. And I'm just going to give you a couple tips and tricks, specifically things that you need to know when we're working with text boxes. So as soon as mine loads here, and because I have a lot of pictures, it might take a minute to load, we'll go and get started with that. So the text boxes are similar to working with text in Google Docs, but there's a couple little differences, and those differences are important, so I'm going to go over them with you. So I'm going to create a new slide, and I'm going to purposely select a slide layout that has a title and a body. So the title is already, the text in the title is already formatted to be a title. It's going to be a little bit bolder. It's going to be a little bit bigger. So I'm just going to do an example here. Let's say I wanted to do the example of my favorite food. All right, so I want to talk about my favorite foods in this slide. So that's the title. And all you do to access the text in this title is click on the words. And you can see how my mouse changes from an arrow. As soon as I get onto the words, it changes into this almost like an eye shape. That's telling me it's going to give me a cursor. A cursor is this flashing line here that tells me where my typing is going to start. So if I type a G, it's going to put it right in there. If I move my cursor down here and I type the G down here, it goes right there. So as long as my mouse becomes the cursor or my arrow becomes the cursor, that means I can start typing. Now you noticed when I move the mouse to the edge of this text box, it changes into this four-way arrow. This four-way arrow, even though the cursor's here, if I click and I drag with the four-way arrow, it's going to move the entire text box around. And you can see that it gives me a red line that tells me when it's lined up perfectly in the middle of the slide. That's just for a guideline. Now, you know what? I moved that on accident, so I'm going to hit Edit, Undo, and it snaps it right back up to where it was. You can also do Control Z. Control Z is my favorite. Okay, so unlike when you're resizing an image, it is totally fine to resize a text box from those side arrows. I'm going to show you what it does. So basically it just smooshes everything into this shape. Now you can see that the text doesn't all fit into this shape. So by default, it's going to go down. Okay? And again, I'm going to undo with Control Z, Control Z. I just undid it twice to get it back. Okay. So let's start adding text. So I'm just going to type what my favorite foods are. Okay, so my favorite kind of food is Mexican food. I like bean burritos, and sometimes I'll even eat queso dip when I'm not vegan. We'll talk about what vegan means if you're curious at all later today. So I want to add a picture of a burrito and some queso dip. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to do a Google image search for bean burrito. Change it to images. All right, looks great. This bean burrito looks amazing. So I'm going to click on it. I'm going to 2 fingers, 1 tap. I'm going to copy image address because I got to get that citation in there so that I know that this isn't copyrighted. Now, look what happens. So if I click in this box, this text box takes up this much space. Look what happens when I paste inside of that box. So even though there's no words down here, this part down here is still part of that text box. Watch what happens when I paste. So it replaces everything in the text box with what has been pasted. So in order to avoid that, first of all, Control Z, undo. Now the computer still remembers the last thing I copied, so it's still remembering that web address. All you have to do here is take this bottom part and slide it up so it wraps pretty closely around your words. And like I said, you can even slide it in, slide it down. Make that textbook box nice and tight around your words. And then what you can do, you can either draw another text box with this text box right here and paste, okay? And then you can go through and change the color and everything and the font, whatever you want to do. You could also, I'm going to undo all this with Control Z. You could also just paste it somewhere where it's not inside of a text box. So all this space over here is totally free from a text box. And we have to remember too that this text box spans this entire slide. So if I'm pasting something up here, I want to make sure that I change that text box and make it smaller. So I can just paste it down here where there's no anything, and then slide it over here. And remember, look how I use that 4 arrow thing to move it around. As long as you get that 4 arrow, you can click and drag it anywhere. Now look, I don't have a cursor, so I don't need to highlight anything. But as long as this blue box is around the words and the cursor is not flashing in here, like it's not asking me to type anything, I can go ahead and change the formatting and it'll change everything in there automatically. So I can make that 6, and let's make this a different font. So then I slide my text box around. Oh, that's another thing I can tell you guys. If you find this symbol, when you're talking about a text box, you can move your text box around, or you can move the words in your text box around. So if I want them to be center aligned, like we learned about in the Google Docs project and the missing poster project, I click that. You can also snap them to the bottom of the box, snap them to the top of the box, keep them in the middle of the box, and then you can use this to put them on the right side and this to put them on the left side. This won't really do too much for us right now. We can talk about that later. Okay, so I'm going to have them centered, and I'll just make my text box tiny. All right, and I'll just snap it down here in the corner. And see how the red lines, as I'm moving this around, the red lines tell me when I'm exactly in the corner of the slide. So I've got 2 red lines, one on the top and one on the side. That means I'm exactly in the corner. So I can snap it down here. Oops. Let's try that again. I can snap it down here with the red line and the red line. Bam. And then I'm going to go up and I'm going to make it right aligned. So it snaps to the right side of the box. So it's exactly in the corner. I'm going to go back to my bean burrito picture, copy image, go back here. And then again, making sure I'm not pasting it in this text box or in this text box, because watch what happens. If I try to paste it, even though it doesn't look like there's any words over here, this text box is still over here. So I try to paste the picture over here. And oh, actually, I guess when you paste a picture inside of a text box, it just makes a different one. Sorry about that, guys. Never mind. Okay. So I can resize this, again, resizing it from the corner so that nothing gets all warped and funky. Click here, get the boxes around, drag it down, make it a nice size right here. Now let's say that I had this text box expanded all the way over here. Okay, and I had my picture a little bit bigger. So the picture overlaps with the words. Okay, couple things you can do, because the picture and the text box are totally separate entities. You can just slide the picture down a little bit, and even though the 2 boxes overlap, that's okay. You can have it inside of there, that's fine. You can also just take this text box, let's say that this is overlapping the words, just click on the text box, so you click on the box, and go ahead and drag it so it's not overlapping the picture at all. Okay? All right, so that's a little bit of an example of how to mess around with text boxes and how to make sure that your slides look nice and clean and organized. If you have any other questions today, let me know. You're going to have to complete you're going to have at least 2 slides totally perfectly done, and then I want you to have at least 2 more slides started by the end of class. All right, thanks guys. I will be around to help you in a minute.